Hey guys, it's Kevin here. Today we're going to be talking about lo-fi. So this is actually really interesting because this is the first genre that we're covering that didn't really start with a particular group of people or develop in a certain area. The best I can describe it is just a nostalgic analog vinyl sound of urban America. So the term has been thrown around since the 1950s, but really in the 70s and 80s, it was a way to describe the value of a production. So if it was really well produced, if it was a high budget, it would be hi-fi, whereas lo-fi was more the cheaper recording methods or more of what you would know as a bedroom producer. So throughout the 60s and 70s, this was really known as a DIY, a do-it-yourself recording method. And a lot of the 1960s garage rock, the punk rock scene kind of recorded in this method where it was almost low budget sounding. So one big name in the 60s and 70s is R. Stevie Moore. He's not necessarily a lo-fi artist or producer, but just his style and his method, his experimental ambient sound kind of really pushed this genre and inspired a lot of the future producers. Bringing us almost to 1980, in 1979, Tascam released a Porta Studio, and this really changed the game for a lot of people who recorded on their own, tried to do their own projects at home, because you could do a lot of splicing, a lot of overdubbing, and a ton of editing right at your fingertips. Now moving into the 90s, we have indie rock, which is really just described as being independent from a record label, right? So this sound usually had that kind of lo-fi feel to it. So it was kind of synonymous in the 80s and 90s, at least the early 90s, that these were one and the same. And then in 1994, the New York Times released an article entitled Lo-Fi Rockers Opt for Raw Over Slick. So this can be kind of documented as one of the first times that lo-fi was referred to almost as a genre in itself. So all throughout the music industry, there are a few different genres that kind of come about that are almost derivatives of this lo-fi sound. We have dream pop and shoegaze, and then in 2009 we have chill wave, which is, there's a few stories about it, but a lot of people talk about the online blog Hipster Runoff, where this was almost fabricated in itself, this whole genre, and a lot came from it. This lo-fi genre, the modern lo-fi hip-hop sound, really stems off of this. So some modern day artists who really take advantage of and welcome that lo-fi sound, that ambient sound, people like Beck, Ariel Pink, and Animal Collective. These are three pretty diverse groups that all have really the same overlying themes. So in 2017, we start to see lo-fi become a very popular genre, especially on YouTube. There are two people known as the godfathers of lo-fi. You have the Japanese producer Nujables and the rapper Dilla. Because lo-fi hip-hop really grew so much over the internet the past few years, there's really nowhere to point to say how things evolved other than to say it's more of as a collective. We have YouTubers, at-home producers, SoundCloud rappers, all collaborating to make these lo-fi hip-hop beats, and it's really a big community. And nowadays it's really such a diverse community of people from all backgrounds and genres and places around the globe. Some popular artists in the genre modernly that you should go check out for sure are Tora Emoy, BSD.U, Dilla, and Madlib. So as far as instruments and equipment used for the genre, we can start with sampling. Lots of old vinyl and old records, any old recordings are usually sampled for this. And this can be used using a tape recorder, digital recorders, anything like that. We also have common instruments like a piano, any kind of stringed or plucked instrument, anything from like a guitar or violin, and even including around the world. So you have the koto in Japan or a satir in the Middle East. It's really diverse. And lastly, we have a lot of percussion, and not necessarily just drum set, but more of just sampled drums, lots of weird found percussion sounds. And we also have a lot of soundscapes and Foley recordings, which means, for instance, a recording of a stream or a river or nature, some birds chirping, real life, just everyday recordings. There are so many songs underneath the lo-fi genre that it's kind of hard to pick out a few to show you that influence the genre. But I'm just going to play a piece from R. Stevie Moore and then Beck, as well as some more modern stuff. So as far as describing some of the music writing for lo-fi, the BPM is going to be about 50 to 85. Anything really down-tempo works. You're usually also going to have a soft or jazzy piano melody, along with some samples from old recordings or records. So this could be anything. It could be a brass line. It could be chopped vocals. Really anything that could make a nice little background. So you're going to have a funk or hip-hop drum beat going on. And you can really have some weird sounds in there. Anything that kind of create a nice environment for the piece. You're also going to have a lot of filters and chorus effects to kind of make the sound a little more dry and exposed and just give a lot more warmth to it. There's really no form to lo-fi music. It's just super minimal, and really there'll be a part that repeats a main melody, and there might be an A or B section that changes it up. Alright, thanks for watching so far. We're about to move over to Logic Pro to show you how to write a lo-fi hip-hop beat from scratch. Go ahead and check out the description below. There'll be a ton of good resources for music and lo-fi, as well as a link to our final recording. Alright, let's get started making a lo-fi track. So what we'll start with is we'll go find a sample, and we'll kind of mash it up, play around with it, get it sounding pretty good, and then we'll add a drum beat to it. And after that, we can just noodle around, add some pianos, add anything like that. And then lastly, we'll just add some effects, some filters, and make it sound pretty good. So yeah, let's get started. I'm going to open up Machine. That's what we're going to do all the sampling in. And yeah, I find it works pretty well. So I'm done chopping it up. So one important thing to note is that you want your polyphony right here on 1. If it's anything different, anything higher, it'll play that number of notes and your samples will start to overlap. And you don't really want that in this setting. You want to be able to press it. When you press the next sample, it cuts it off. So you're always getting a steady flow, no matter how long or short the sample is. So yeah, next thing up, we're going to just experiment. We're just going to mess around, play around, hit the pads, and try and get something cool. First, let's just go through. I'll show you some of the sounds we have. So a lot of cool little kind of weird chorusy guitar stuff. So yeah, I'm gonna mess around and I'll be back with a cool little sample. All right, cool. So we have our samples done. So there's a little bit of a lot of flowing and a lot of cutting off and imperfections, and that's kind of what you're looking for. Something kind of chill. It's okay if there's any, notes off the beat or any notes that aren't in tune. That's perfectly fine. It's supposed to be super minimal, and imperfections are actually good. So let's give a listen. Let's see what happens. Yeah, really nice, really easy. So next up, let's give a drum beat so we can get that started and get a little groove in our head. So we're gonna go find some samples. Try and find some low grade. Like the kick shouldn't really be punchy. Maybe a more dry kick with a lot of character. Snare can be super old sounding. The hi hats can be super dry. Yeah, don't try to go find any really high quality samples. Just take what you can get, and you can always edit them later. Awesome. So we just built a kit from scratch and just a bunch of random samples. I'm going to go through. Give yourself a few snares, a few claps, and then definitely a closed hi-hat, open hi-hat is always a good idea. Any other random sound effects are great for this genre. Like clicks, scratches, dings, anything that could be percussive. You can record your own stuff. Anything you can find in your kitchen that you can hit and make a noise is cool. There's so many different types of things. Metal, you can just clang together. It'll make a cool sound. So let's see what I got so far. Right, so that's it. That's what we're gonna build a beat around. So I'm gonna go ahead and make a beat or two. Make it hip hop, right? So snare just on 2 and 4, and the kick can be pretty spontaneous and have a lot of syncopation, I guess. Try not to keep it too busy, but that's where we're gonna start at. All right, so this is a really good starting spot. So I just built a beat. Don't go crazy yet. Just give yourself a foundation. That way we can add some more stuff, and then you can use your ear to kind of fill in the gaps, if that makes sense. So it's okay to be sloppy with this, especially with the kick. You want the snare to be kind of right on the beat for the most part. And the hi-hat, at first I like to keep the hi-hat super in time, and then later on in the song I'll kind of drop it and keep it a little bit more off the beat. And I'll show you how that works. But for now, let's just check out the second loop. The first one is just more of a cross stick and a clap and then no hi-hat. So let's just check out the second one. Super simple. So now we can ask ourselves, what do we want to add next? And a good idea would probably be kind of like a background line, like a piano, kind of like a plucked string instrument would work fine. So let's use Spitfire. Spitfire Labs is really cool, especially for this genre. They have a ton of different stuff. This is all free, by the way. You should go get it. Spitfire Audio. And the plugin is called Labs. They have a ton of stuff, but this specific one is free. So there's no reason not to have it. They have a ton of different instruments. Right now I just have the soft piano downloaded. So let's check it out. It's really beautiful. And it has a really natural, very almost unprofessional way it's recorded. So it sounds really nice and authentic. And in the higher keys, you can actually hear the keys being pressed down. Right, so it'll make really good for this kind of music, really chilled. It's also a really soft piano. You can have a bright piano where, the keys are really attack heavy, but this is more resonant, so it'll work really well. So I'm just gonna noodle around and find a cool line. Don't keep it too busy. Try not to put any chords yet. I just play kind of like a harmonic line. I also forgot to mention you should probably figure out what key you're in at this point. So yeah, I believe it says C. Obviously you can pitch up, pitch down. It might sound cooler that way, so I'll figure something out. Awesome, so we got it in there, and what I did is I put a touch of reverb from the plugin itself, and then I added a compressor because it was pretty soft and a little too subtle. Raising the volume didn't do good enough, so I added a compressor, and I also panned it to the right, just a touch. So obviously the next thing we're gonna need to fill up our left ear a little bit. So we'll get to that. We'll probably do a pad. Yeah, and that'll be it. So let's check out what we got so far. Pretty nice. So yeah, I'm gonna go find a cool pad. You kind of want it to be pretty atmospheric, very moving, and almost something that's not really heard, and it doesn't take away. It's more just fills up all the space. So I'm gonna go mess around for a second. I'll be right back. Awesome. So I actually decided on two pads. One is more of just like a little background lead sound. I used a cool plugin called Apparillo, and it's kind of like a modeling synth. It's got quite the visualizations too. It's really neat, and yeah. Anyway, one is a little more bright and kind of added some kind of grunge on the front of it. I don't know if you can hear that. And the second one is more of like a choir, more of like a singing sound. And here's what we got so far, all together. Right? I mean, that's lo-fi already. So let's add one more thing. Let's add a little bass, just a subtle bass. I'm just gonna go find a cool Logic preset, like a preset bass, and yeah, make it easy. All right, so the bass should be really far back in the mix, super low. And I have it where it shouldn't even really be heard, it should be felt. And super simple, just keep it moving. I just have it going between the 1 and the 5, E and then B. So yeah, it's very simple. So let's check it out. You might not even be able to hear it through the capture device. I'm not sure, let's see. So we're just about done with having to add any parts. So from here on, you can just add any flavor, mess around with the drum part, add some more weird little things that can kind of capture your attention. But next thing I want to show you is an awesome plugin for lo-fi. It's called Isotope Vinyl, and it will do wonders. I'm just going to throw it on the main out, the master, and just hear how it sounds on everything. It's not going to be perfect, but it'll give you a good idea of what it does. Boom, it's done. Lo-fi. All right, see y'all. But for real, it's a really cool plugin, and what it does is this wear knob. It's kind of like a filter that takes out all the high frequencies, and the more you put, the more kind of distortion or more like just information loss is going to happen. And then warp depth is basically, you can think of like a record spinning, and the warp depth will be like pitch and like speed up, slow down. So it adds a lot of weird subtlety, diversity, and like pitch, and just makes it more imperfect, which is what we're looking for. And down here is a year knob. It kind of gives you different setups for different recording techniques from different decades. Think of it just like an amplifier kind of thing. So I have it set to 1970. Yeah, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to take it off the main mix, and I'm going to go and put it on individual channels so we can make it a little bit more better of a mix, because sometimes this plugin, it'll mess up the drums too much. The kick and the snare will be overly affected more than we want. So yeah, I'm going to go back and put it on each one. I'll be back. So one thing I wanted to show you all is that kind of push-pull drum beat that's pretty famous in lo-fi, and also, you know, a lot of hip-hop nowadays. Basically, it's just sloppy, right? So what we want is we can kind of move some of these snare hits, some of these kick drums, kind of move them a little bit off the beat. And then the major key here is the hi-hat. So what we're going to do is put eighth notes over the whole line, right? So right now they're perfectly quantized on every eighth note. Now, the next thing is on the upbeats, like push them up just a smidge, like very barely. So we have a downbeat. Well, I guess technically we're in halftime. So every beat 2 and 4, we're going to push up just a hair. Yeah, you hear that sound? That's exactly what happens. So what the hi-hat's doing is it's kind of pushing, pulling us, so we're not really steady. Whereas the kick and the snare are keeping us on the beat, right? Dragging us along. Yeah, so this kick's a little too sloppy right here. So I added one more instrument and a new section basically. So another really big thing is kind of like plucked or stringed flutes, Middle Eastern or Far East Asia. Those are really cool sounds that a lot of people add to this lo-fi sound. So yeah, let's hear what I got. And it's that simple. So if you're trying to make beats to study to relax to, this is it. That's all it takes. And from here, it's just arranging. Nothing crazy. You want to keep it flowing. So in between sections, maybe have a transition, some noise, and then, yeah, just keep it easy. Breaks are cool. As you can hear at the end of each phrase, I have a little, the drums stop and it's just the kick. That's pretty cool. You can have it where it's going and it just stops a beat. You can also have it where it doesn't come in for another beat. For instance, I'll do that real quick. right? It's like a little pause. It's always really cool. We'll probably add like, isn't that neat? Yeah, it's just a very small thing, but it just gets it going. Yeah, and from there on out, it's just noodling, add some cool stuff. This arrangement's pretty full already, so I probably won't add too much. If anything, maybe some percussion. And like I said, the transitions. So yeah, thanks for watching. I'll time lapse to the end, and then yeah, I'll show you the full product. So thanks for watching.